Okay, welcome Jabalali. In the last couple of tutorials, we have created and initialized some variables, one for our number one, and one for our number two, and one for our answer, and we gave them values of 0 each. And then we took the input from our text input and stored a value in number one and stored a value in number two. Now we're going to use the two variables, number one and number two, to perform a calculation, and we're going to store the answer to that calculation in the variable answer. So let's do that now. So we need to go to variables. So we're looking in variables, and from here we're going to choose the set name. Okay, so what this is going to do is going to set our variable value to be, in this case, I'm going to do the addition. Okay, so we're storing the answer to the addition inside the variable answer. So if you remember here, we created the variable called answer. So I'm going to use that answer variable. So I'm going to add the variable here. And then I'm going to perform a calculation, and the answer is going to be stored in the variable answer. Notice here I've spelled it wrong, so that wouldn't have worked. So make sure you spell it exactly the same as you did when you initialized it. Even if it's got a capital, it must have a capital here. So we're going to do our first calculation. So we're going to do an addition. So I'm going to math. And see, you've got plus, minus, multiply, and divide. So I'm going to drag over the plus and put that into the section here. So at the moment, it's adding 1 to 1 and storing that value in answer. So I don't want to be adding the 1 to 1. I want to be adding the value stored in number 1 variable to the value stored in number 2 variable. So again, I need the variable name. So I go to variables, and I'm going to drag over my number 1 variable, and that's going to go in there. And I'm going to do the similar again. I'm going to this time drag over the number 2 variable and place that in place of the number 1. And I'm going to connect that to my previous 2 blocks. Okay, they're grayed out at the moment because they are actually not initialized yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. It's not colorful like these blocks here, but it will be soon. So now we've got the calculation stored in the answer variable, and I want to display the contents of the answer variable on the screen. And the way we did that is on our design, we used, if you remember, the answer label, and that's where the answer is going to be displayed. So I'm going to look for my answer component. Now it's just in here, if you can see. Let me just scroll down. It's a bit tricky to scroll. So yeah, there's my answer label. So I'm going to click on answer label, and it will display some blocks that are associated with it. And what we're going to use from here, we're going to say from answer label set text to. So that's going to be the first block. I'm going to drag and drop that here. Okay, so what we're going to do is what I want the variable contents to be displayed on the label. At the moment, it's just, you could display some text if I typed in here, but I don't want that. I want the contents of my variable. So I'm going to go to my variables, which is just here, and drag over my answer variable that I created earlier. So this is when I initialized it, set the value to 0, but now it's going to have the value of number 1 plus number 2. Now, the final thing we need to do is enable our calculation to be done when we enter the numbers in and when we click on the plus button. So what we're going to do is look for the add button or plus button, depends what you called it, and it's down in here in our components. So let me just find it, and you should see it. So yeah, there's my add button. So I click on my add button. Just a reminder, if you've forgotten, the add button was here, and remember I gave it a name, add button. Okay, so we'll need that. So go to my add button. Oops, I've lost it again. Sometimes it's tricky to scroll down because, there we go. So there's my add button. So I click on there and I'm going to choose the block add button, click. So when add button is clicked, do. So I'm going to drag that onto my block area. And you see it's got a mouth. And basically whatever goes inside the mouth will happen when the button is clicked. So I'm going to drag all of my blocks and put them inside. And you'll see as immediately I put them in, they become active, okay? Because they've got something that enables them to happen. So when I click on the add button, my number one variable will be given the value from the text input. My number two variable will be given the input from number two text input. And then my calculation's done here, and the value is stored in my answer variable. And the answer variable content is displayed on the answer label. And this all will happen when I click on my button. So we can see that working. So if I go to design and I click on preview. Okay, let's test this. So first thing I need to do is add my first number. So let's go for 5. And enter number 2, we'll go for 8. I've only programmed my plus button, so nothing else works at the moment. So let's try that. So I click on, just move that upwards. When I click on plus, hey presto, I get my answer. I'll just try that again to say that it's not magic. Let's have a go. Let's have 12 plus 34. Click on the plus and you get the right value. And that is how you begin programming your app, in this case to perform pluses or additions. And basically you need to do exactly the same for all of your other buttons. So you'll need to go back to your blocks and basically you're going to do the same code for each button. The only difference will be the calculation type here, and make sure you choose the correct button. Okay, so you'll have a -1, a divide, and a multiply, addition to the plus the plus. Okay, so there you go. So that is how you program